This happened a few months ago when I was still living in Georgia. I've recently moved to Vermont because of this issue, and I'm now ready to tell my little story. Once upon a time, I was at the library alone while using Wi-Fi. My girlfriend was at home a few blocks down the road. I'd already planned on messaging her when I was ready to be picked up. I didn't have a phone at the time, so I needed Facebook to help me out. Little did I know the library closes early on Fridays. I guess in the grand scheme I should have checked. Anyway, when the library's about to close, they cut the Wi-Fi off about 10 minutes prior. So when I sent the pickup message to my girlfriend, it was basically declined. I didn't freak out too much because I figured she would get worried and come find me in a few minutes anyway. I decided to step outside and have a cigarette while I waited. That's where I fucked up. To my left was an old man who I had seen around the small town here and there. A few times at the Rite Aid and the dollar store. Most of the time I ignore him because he seems a bit out of it. His face is always dirty around the mouth and he never seems to speak coherently. He'll just walk up to you and say something like,
"Hey, have you tried my new book?"
Something off the wall. I mean, it could be old age, or he could just be a little slow. Either way, he seemed harmless most of the time. So anyway, I spot him and I nod my head, saying hi. He says something off the wall to me, and I just smile and pretend to know what he's talking about. He hands me a pamphlet about Jesus. I just accept it and try to start walking home. He follows me. I told him to stay there and wait for me, in hopes that something would click in his mind and cause him to stop. He didn't. So I turn back and go into the library. They were closed, but the doors still let me in. I walk over and wave the old lady who works there down. Mrs. Helen, I call her. I tell her that he's following me. This badass little old grandma lady marches right out there and tells him he better find somewhere else to be. No fear. She explains to me that he might not know what he's doing. I agree, and I tell her it just freaked me out is all. I'm a woman, and having a strange man follow you is off-putting. I chalk it up to that, and I start walking away. I look back to see if that man had followed. He was on the other side of the parking lot. He was just staring at me. At first I ignored it, but when I looked back, he was still staring. And then he did the thing. 2 fingers. He gestures at his eyes and then at me.
"I'm watching you."
That's what that was. Now tell me, does he not know what he's doing? Is he just some weird old man with dementia? I don't know. A week goes by. I decide we need some junk from the store. I walk towards the store, and as I cross the tracks I notice something. That man. I was roughly a block from my house when I spot him. What does he do when he sees me? "I'm watching you." That gesture again. The hair on the back of my neck stands up. I do my best to ignore it, and I keep walking. I'm almost sprinting by the time I get to the store. I work there, so I knew everyone. I call out to Pam, my manager. I beg her to tell this man to get the fuck out when he walks in. He would be right behind me. Sure enough, there he was a few moments later. She asked him if he needed anything. He says,
"Her. I need her. She needs to come to Jesus."
Pam threw him out. Thank you, second mother. I was too scared to walk home, so I called my girlfriend and I told her what was happening. She came and got me. Sure enough, he was waiting outside the store when she pulled up. I had never been so freaked out. I mean, at that point, so far. A few days go by and my stupid ass thinks, hey, why not go work in the yard instead of sitting in the house freaking out about weird Jesus guy? I head outside after getting myself a beer and hooking my music up to our big speaker. I set things up on the porch, then look out toward the road. I shot beer out of my nose. Guys, that fucking hurts. There that old man was, standing in the ditch watching me. You can't make this shit up. I call out for my girlfriend and here she comes. When she saw him, she grabbed the phone and called the cops. They picked him up and the drama subsided for maybe a month. I didn't see him anywhere. I thought it was over and life was getting back to normal. Chickens, you've been counted, but you haven't hatched yet. This never ends well. Just when I thought I would never see him again, just when he had left my mind, just when the anxiety of him finding me was gone, he was back. I was at Rite Aid getting some junk for the house when I saw him come in. I actually ducked. I fucking ducked behind the aisle end cap because I'm a scared little girl with a problem. I've never been so ashamed of myself. People were staring at me. Randy, the guy behind the counter, asked if I was okay, and I told him how this guy was following me and harassing me. He wouldn't stop. And I knew, if he saw me, he would start up again. I crawled across the floor and made my way out the doors before he spotted me. I ran all the way home like an idiot. I told my girlfriend what happened and she offered to call the cops again. I told her not to because, in the long run, he hadn't done anything to me yet. Yet. I made it a point, as I went around town, to watch. Take note of every corner. Look all around me as I head to the store or the library or wherever. Every once in a while I would see him and he would see me, and he would make that hand gesture. He was always watching me. I had informed some of the locals about my issue with him. Some of them told me not to worry so much. Others shared that they had had similar issues with him. One girl, Madison, who I worked with, told me how he would follow her around. He had been following her up until he started following me around, so he had moved on, it seemed. While I was happy for Madison that she was free, I was terrified for myself. Now, I know you guys are sitting here going, what the fuck? Why did you skip states just to get away from this guy who's in your town looking at you occasionally? Here's why. He broke into my house, guys. He let himself right in after breaking a window. We were out and about when this happened. When we got home, I felt something was off, but I pushed it aside. My girlfriend and I put our groceries away, then got started on dinner. By this time, I was a wreck. I kept feeling like something was off. When I went into our room, the shit hit the fan. There was that goddamn old man asleep in our bed. He'd already urinated on it. We called the cops and he went away for a good while. We decided changing states was a good idea. I just never wanted to risk seeing him again. He went as far as to break into our house and sleep in our bed. The next time he finds me, he was gonna kill me. I just knew it. So we hopped, skipped, and jumped. It was time anyway. So, creepy Jesus dude. Yeah, I hope you're still in jail or whatever. Let's never meet again. I used to work at one of those 24/7 Walmart supercenters. I was right out of high school, a 19-year-old woman, and I worked as a cashier for 2 terrible years where I was subjected to all kinds of abuse from customers and co-workers alike. I mean, I was screamed at, slammed into a register face first, groped, and even farted on once because this old lady was mad that oranges were priced each and not by the pound. I'm not kidding. However, the time that sticks out in my head the most is the time a customer tried to follow me home. I had just started my shift, and the second I got on the register I had a line about 10 people long. For some reason, the Walmart I worked at never had enough registers open, so people were usually really mad and impatient by the time they got to me. I get right to work, and keep a smile plastered to my face while making the minimal, mandatory small talk. How are you? Did you find everything? Most customers were polite, but not very interested in talking, so it's easy to fall into a bit of a cashier robot mode. I get to this guy who only had 2 items, yogurt and band-aids. I ring it all up in record time and neatly bag it up, but the customer doesn't seem to be paying any attention. He wouldn't look at me or answer my greeting. His eyes just stared right down at the conveyor belt. Maybe he was a bit zoned out? The conveyor belt didn't look too dirty. I hadn't had a chance to wash it yet because the second I'd walked over to the register, people lined up. Side note, always bag up your produce. Conveyor belts get really nasty. I tell the man his total, which was something like $4.36, and he starts fishing in his pockets for exact change without looking up. Inwardly, I groan, but I keep my customer service smile fixed into place while I wait. He is wearing one of those muddy brown denim jackets with lots of pockets, and as he rifles through, I keep catching whiffs of stale BO and cigarettes. His hands were pretty dirty too, and all dried out from the cold weather. He dumps out an assortment of change on the counter, still not looking at me, and I begin to count it up. Everything is uncomfortably quiet. I can feel the eyes of every customer waiting in line boring into me. All except for the guy who was then digging into his pants pocket too. He was about 30 cents short. I let him know once I was sure he wasn't going to find any more coins. It was then that he looks at me, making this scrunched up face. His eyes were very dark brown, almost black, and they pierced right into me accusingly as if he thought I was lying or something. While he was watching, I counted everything again.
It's only 30 cents. Can't you just give me your employee discount?
No, that's against the rules, I answered apologetically. Do you want to put something back? I wasn't about to get fired for giving someone my discount, which was only 10% if you're wondering. He wasn't the first person to ask for it, but most people pretended they were joking. He was not joking.
No, I want them,
he said, glaring at me. I was beginning to wish he'd start staring at the conveyor belt again instead of me. He was making me pretty uncomfortable. If I'd had 30 cents in my pocket, I would have paid it up myself just to get this guy to leave. He reaches over to take the bag, but I turn the little bag carousel so that he can't. That was probably a stupid move on my part, but it wasn't like I could just let him steal, right? If my register was short 30 cents, my supervisors would be all over me.
I know you get a discount, just plug it in!
He completely blows up at this point, but I just shake my head and look at the other customers, probably with a deer in headlights expression. People are watching, but no one actually does anything. This is just something that's inconveniencing them, even though I'm actually pretty scared. I'd already started flashing my register light so that the CSM would come, but they were notorious for taking their sweet time. I'll get a CSM, but it might take a few minutes, I nervously offer, but the man just goes off and goes on about how it's not that much and he needs it, with some explicit language thrown in, of course. He leaves before the supervisor comes over, grabbing all of his change and shoving it all into one pocket before stomping off. I'm relieved that he's gone, and I continue working in uneasy silence. Everything seems to go on as normal after that. My shift ends at midnight, and I managed to clock out on time for once. I didn't have a car, and I would normally call my mum to come pick me up, but she was out of town and it was too late to call anyone else, so I decided to walk rather than waste money on a cab. I lived about 20 minutes away and felt pretty safe walking because you didn't really tend to run into other pedestrians at that hour. After a few minutes of walking, I noticed a car was driving really slowly behind me. The speed limit was 45 miles per hour, and this car was probably going about 10 miles per hour. I got a bad gut feeling and walked a little faster while trying to rationalize it. It could have been someone who wanted to offer me a ride or get directions. But no. Whoever it was stayed behind me and did not try to pull up next to me at all, even though they were going really slowly. After about 5 minutes of this, the car finally turns off into one of the neighborhoods. I was relieved, but it was short-lived. The driver parks his car on the curb and gets out of the car and comes jogging up to me. I realize immediately that it was Yogurt/Band-Aid guy. He's wearing the same exact muddy brown jacket and is staring at me with those dead eyes. I turn around and start jogging down the sidewalk, which is still icy, and he just jogs up right next to me. I can actually hear the change jingling in his pocket. He doesn't say anything at first, so I just try to run faster without slipping. Had this guy been sitting in the parking lot for hours waiting for me to get off work? Apparently so. I feel him staring at me and turn my head to look at him while still running as fast as I can on the ice. Inwardly, I thank my lucky stars that there was fresh gravel laid out, or I probably would have slipped in classic horror movie cliché. "What colour is your underwear?" he asks. This question horrifies and disgusts me, so my immediate reaction is, "Don't be a creep!" I punched him right in the face. It hurt my hand like a bitch, but he stopped running for a second and bent forward a bit, clutching his face. I swear I heard him say, "Okay," but I just keep running and I'm too scared to look back. I'm not sure if he kept following me after that, but I didn't run straight home because I was terrified of him figuring out where I lived. When I did make it home, probably an hour later, I went to my landlady's apartment first and told her what happened. I was really shaken up, and I told her that if she saw a suspicious guy around the building, she should call the police. My mum was out of town, as I said. I did still live with her at the time, and she didn't answer my calls, so I watched Disney movies until I was calm enough to go to sleep. The next day, I told the managers at work what happened, but they didn't care. In hindsight, I probably should have called the police, but I was young and I thought if that was necessary, management would have told me to do it. I don't know why I thought that, considering they had a way of really not caring about their employees, and this sort of situation wouldn't have made them look good. This wasn't the only Walmart-related instance where police should have been called but weren't. I felt pretty angry that they didn't take me seriously or care that I was scared. I wanted to go home early because I was scared that the guy would show up again, but they told me no and made me go work the registers. I quit shortly after that. I never did see Yogurt/Band-Aid guy again, but it's been about 10 years and I'm not even sure I'd recognize him even if I did. Even so, Yogurt/Band-Aid guy? Let's not meet again. So before I get into the story, I will give you a bit of a backstory about where this took place. Behind my old school we have a large farm area, and recently this had been turned into a building site, but a public footpath remained along the side of the farm. Before the building had begun, we would always hang out at this track, sit on the bridge and just go on with the day. It was a Sunday afternoon, around 2 PM. We had started to head down to the old spot, and as we walked down the street, a car started to follow us. Now, this street is a dead end, but cars often go up it to turn around, so when we saw him, we really didn't think twice. We entered a hole in the fence and started to walk along the field that led to the train track. After crossing the field, we got onto the road that leads to the track. We'd gone through the public footpath and sat down on a wall near the entrance. We sat there for a few minutes before I decided to hop to the other side of the wall and find somewhere better to relax. I jump down from the wall and start to climb the hill behind it when my friend turns to me and tells me the car from before is pulled up. I duck down behind the wall and tell my friend to do the same. So he does, or at least he tries to. He turns on the wall and gets ready to jump when the guy who was in the car grabs his bag and pulls my friend off the wall. Not wanting my friend to get hurt, I jumped back over the wall to help him, and this is when the guy focused his attention on me. He let go of my friend and started on foot to where I was. My friend had started to run at this point, so I decided I should too. Rather than run for the entrance behind the man, I got the idea of hopping the wall and running through the old track. I hop the wall and I start to run, and from behind me I can hear the guy shouting things at me. Things like,
"Wait until I fucking get you, kid."
I hopped off the track and down a hill. Well, fell would be a better word for it. After I'd gotten down the hill, I decided to climb into the construction site. I got halfway down the site and took shelter behind a digger. Now that I was finally out of his view, I decided to call for help. I picked up my phone and called my cousin. Hello? We're being chased. Can you get your dad to come and meet me? We're on the field behind your house. What? What do you mean? I don't have time for games. What do you mean? I'm being chased and I need your help. There's nothing I can do. At this point, I received a call from the friend that was with me before. I gotta go. Jack's calling me. Hey, Jack, where are you?
I'm at the front of the high school. Come and meet me.
Where's the guy?
He's heading back up the hill towards you.
Okay then, I'll run. Meet me at the chemist down the road. I hang up the phone. I start to walk across the construction site towards a fence when, from the hill behind me, I hear a whistle. This set me back into motion as I darted for the fence, not daring to look back in case he was closer than I had imagined. I hopped the fence and landed on the new houses that had been built recently. I started to walk up the road when my friend Jack called again.
Yo, dude, where are you? He's gotten back in his car.
I'm near the new houses. Did you see where he went?
Yeah?
Where?
He's heading towards the new houses.
I pocket my phone and hide behind a wall near the entrance to the estate. The guy drives past me and I take my chance. I shoot up and I make a sprint for the chemist. The guy spots me and starts to make his way back out of the estate towards me again. I made it to the chemist finally and I ran through the door. My friend Jack was there.
You all good?
He asked me. I said, yeah, he's coming though. Jack said he fucked me up pretty bad, and he pulled out his broken glasses and showed me the cut in his hand. Fuck, dude, what do we do? I said. We left the chemist and sat on the front for some time, the guy waiting just outside the gate. About 10 minutes passed and he zoomed off. So, random guy who thinks it's okay to jump 2 teens on a public path. Let's not meet again. This happened a few months ago. I am a senior at a smaller sized college town with a college known for some sexual assault. I don't go out to frat parties or anything, so I don't worry much about it. In about November, it was fucking cold as hell and I was wearing a thick long winter jacket and a backpack. I got back from my friend's house at like 4 AM. I'm not normally back this late. It was empty and quiet in the parking lot. My apartment complex is alright, but not great. There are a lot of party college kids and the weekend nights are full of drunk screamers and loud cars, but at that point it was pretty quiet. I said goodnight to my friend as he had driven me home, and I walked the 20 feet or so to the stairs to my second floor apartment. The layout of my apartment is important. As you turn to our front door, our balcony has my room's window right there. So I have to keep the blinds down as anyone can easily go right up to my window and see in. I got inside and go to get ready for bed. There's like 3 inches of blinds up at the bottom of my window for knickknacks, figurines and light, as my room doesn't get much natural light the way it's built. So I'm changing into my PJs and doing all the bathroom stuff, and I head to my bed that's right next to my window. With the light off, I notice this weird shadow moving quickly back and forth on the right corner of my windowsill. I'm confused, as it seems like a flag flapping, but it's too fast and patterned. I peek down to look through the window, and all I can see is some dick getting jacked off. I straighten back up quickly, shocked as fuck. I had no idea what to do for a few seconds. Our walls are hella thin, and I know you can practically have a conversation through my window, so I yell at him to fuck off and that I'm calling the police. He runs, and I start pacing my room, not sure if that even just happened. Mostly I'm angry at first. I do end up calling the police, and immediately start crying and freaking out. I wake my roommate and the police come. I can't give them any information beyond white and maybe average height, as the way our balcony is, he was hiding in the corner and I literally only saw his disgusting dick. I bought a taser the next night, thick curtains to go over the shitty blinds, and I never go outside my apartment at night. For a month, I was an anxious wreck, as he had to have seen me go up to my apartment, he had to have followed me, and he would have crouched down to watch me as I changed. I'm a small 5'1" girl with health problems, and I was so worried he was a stalker. Luckily, nothing happened again that I know of. You can't see in my window at all, and my room is always dark, but still, I can't wait to leave this apartment. Last year I moved to rural Australia from the city to do some farm work with my boyfriend. He's from the UK, and to allow a second year visa he needed to complete 88 days on a farm, so I quit my job and went with him. We stayed in a working hostel, and people worked in farms all around the area. We lived slightly out of town, close to the highway and about 15 minutes from the beach. My boyfriend managed to get a job before I did, which meant a lot of boring days by myself at the hostel. It was early in the season, so there weren't many other backpackers yet. Anyway, on one of the boring days, I decided maybe I'd go to the beach, so I drove into town. The town is surrounded by 3 beaches, like a square on the edge of the sea, if that makes sense. One of the beaches was a bit further away, and I hadn't been there, so I thought I'd check that one out instead. It was the middle of the day, and as this is a small town, there was no one else around. I pulled into the car park, and as I did, I noticed another car pull into the car park. It was a tradesman's work van, with a company logo on the side, but I can't remember what it was. I remember thinking that it was really weird that he'd come to the car park so abruptly. Maybe he was on his lunch break, or just needed to stop for a phone call. For some reason, I didn't get out of the car right away. I just had a funny feeling. I look over into the van, there's about 2 car spaces between our cars, and the guy looks back at me and just stares. He was an older man, I'd say mid-40s, and he just had a very blank expression. Feeling uneasy, I text my boyfriend telling him what beach I'm at just in case. While I'm doing this, van guy jumps out of his car and walks in front of my car and along the path to the entry of the beach and heads down the path. The path down to the beach is fenced to protect the sand dunes, so there's only one way in and out from the beach area. I remember thinking it was weird he was walking down onto the beach, as he was in jeans, a button-down shirt, and black shiny business shoes. Strange attire for a sandy beach in Australia in 35°C heat. I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling I had, but I also knew I could just be thinking the worst of the situation. Just to be safe, I thought I'd drive to one of the other beaches on the other side of town just to be sure. By this time, van guy is out of sight and presumably down on the beach. So I pull out of the car park and drive over to one of the other beaches. Now, I have to explain the layout a little to give some perspective. This other beach is on the complete other side of the town. It's not on a main road, and you really wouldn't head down there unless you lived nearby or you were just heading to that particular beach. The entrance to the car park is a small one-way road. It's like an L shape with car parks along it and then an exit at the end. It's a small car park with a street just over the other side that only has a few houses on it. So I pull into the empty car park. I park my car in the first space. I grab my beach bag and just as I'm about to get out of the car, I see the van in my rear vision mirror. It pulls over quickly across from the street to the entrance to the car park. This time, the man does not get out. At this point, I'm too freaked to get out of the car. It just all seemed so weird. So I quickly drove home and I stayed inside for the rest of the day. I just couldn't shake that weird feeling. A lot of strange things happened in that town. It was like a pass-by town people travelled through a lot to get to major cities. I never saw that man or his van again, but I didn't venture out on my own after that weird encounter. I can't help but think, what would have happened if I walked down onto the beach path? Was he waiting for me? The other thing is that he was at the other beach literally seconds after I was. So that would mean from where he was, he would have had to run up the beach pathway and get in his car quickly to be there that fast. And why park right opposite the entrance? To see if I got out of my car? These are the questions that bothered me the most about this scenario. So, creepy man in the van? Let's not meet. What do you guys think? Am I paranoid? Or did that man have ill intentions? I guess we'll never know.